Тем временем я хочу объявить следующего спикера, который будет выступать с докладом. Четырехкратный победитель стендоффа.
Four times winner of our standoff person. Well, if you could collect events during which you make presentations, he would win. Aleksey Morozov, Samokat.tech. Hello. I see more of you than I expected. Congratulations with this in the morning. Can you give me some kind of a clicker? If you have. Oh, this is that thing. Thank you. Cool. Wonderful. What about your mood? Did you sleep enough? Good enough. Good. Okay, I would like to tell you some stories. Who am I? My name is Aleksey. Very often when I'm speaking, I've been winning standoff. I've stopped doing it 1 year ago. My friends are continuing doing that, but I've stopped doing that. I have a lot of things for my age. I work in application security a lot for my age. And what are we going to speak about today? A little bit I'm going to tell you about what is ASP.NET, what it became, what it was, just a couple of words about it. And let's look at CVs. Who knows what CVs? Lift your hands. Wonderful, I shouldn't explain it. What is ASP.NET or seen this technology at least once? I see your hands. Wonderful, good, cool. Okay, we'll find common grounds. We'll have a fun, and in the end of my presentation, I'm going to tell you what can be done with all of this. Okay, tech.
Давайте немножко скучную часть.
Okay, let's speak about some boring shit. We need some understanding of what is ASP.NET. ASP.NET developed in the course of many years. It's a Microsoft technology. In the beginning of the year 2000, it was just simple static pages. We create them, and development and logic is all inside of it. It's in the 2000s. Then it became a web form. Windows was developing. Windows were developing, and people from Microsoft, they thought about it and they said, why don't we implement web components? And it became component development. So when you put some forms and maybe some events, buttons and things like that, then it became something like that. It became more convenient to develop it indeed, but customization was really complicated for this story. And then ASP.NET MVC came to life, but it dies out slowly. ASP.NET MVC helps to flexibly tune up components, and MVC partner is being implemented. Then .NET Core, ASP.NET Core with open code, cross-platform, and many other things. But many things it has inherited from ASP.NET MVC. So,
Я почти закончил со скучной частью.
I have almost finished the boring part. So, what should you know about that?
Что он из себя представляет?
Pattern MVC, what it looks like. There are three components, very important in this pattern. It's model, view, controller. What is model? Model, basically speaking, is a representation of some object as a class and set of its settings. For example, a model of user, which has a name, password, login, etc. For simplicity of the example, it's going to be like that. Okay, where should I turn the clicker so that it will click immediately? Somewhere here. Okay, representation, view. View shares the logic and what is being seen by logic. This is client part, this is editing, and this is the front end, as we call it. The basic part looks like that.
Отлично. И контроллер.
Okay, wonderful. And controller. Controller, this is something that processes and connects these two parts between each other.
Это наш
And you see requests, this is our backend, basically speaking.
в каком-то виде.
And it returns representation, or a view, everything that we need to know about all of these in order to hear to my presentation.
Если вы
Project structure, if you will create some basic project, you will see it in the following way. So you see mandatory class controllers should have the word controller in the end, and the view should have these representations. They can be split into partial view, etc., etc. And models. In models folder. This is a basic architecture that is being offered by Microsoft. Almost nobody uses it anywhere else. And right now you see the project structure. We're going to speak about vulnerable libraries, and it has some Packet Manager in ASP.NET and .NET.
Вот так он выглядит. Мы устанавливаем какие-то...
That's how it looks like.
Supply chain атаки.
An interesting fact, supply chain attack and Get became leaders in the year 2022.
Nuget был лидером по supply chain атакам. То есть...
Nuget was leader in supply chain attacks. What people were doing, they've been loading vulnerable assemblies, then they pulled it to big companies. Let's move on.
Лечить это очень просто. Достаточно просто.
It's easily fixed. You just can correct two parameters this way, or maybe read documentation, and you fix it.
Теперь перейдем к более интересной части. Итак,
And let's look at most interesting part. CV.
первое, что я хочу рассказать, это про библиотечку Newtonsoft JSON.
Let's speak about Newtonsoft JSON.net. What it does, it basically works with JSON as data object.
Есть интересная история, то что...
And there's an interesting story here. Who knows what deserialization?
Не расскажу.
Not many of you.
У
I'll tell you.
объекта есть какое-то состояние. Чтобы это состояние...
There is an object with certain conditions. In order to store this condition, you serialize this object.
Бинарный формат JSON, как угодно.
Binary, JSON, any other format.
Этот вектор атаки...
With the development of the...
Десериализация...
People do know deserialization as a class has been moved out. And it has been fixed. But an interesting story is that in a library that I've been speaking about,
Type,
there's a parameter, type name handling,
если он установлен...
and it tells you the following. If it's installed with a value none, then you don't serialize the type property, but if any other install, it serializes the type property depending on which value it's been installed. For example, values can be like that, object, array, and all, etc.
Если в коде это выглядит...
If
Всем видно?
in a code it looks like that, look here. Can you see it from the backlines?
И...
Okay, I hope you do. Let's move
Почему
on.
я это показываю? Для того, чтобы... это можно
Why do they show this? So that you can file it together with some.
правила на конкретном...
You write sync graph, write the rules, type name handling, property defined, and you can find some deserialization here.
Соответственно, если у нас...
It can look like an attribute. For example, if we have a class that has been serialized, it can be in the attribute. And then you can see this type property. In a given case, local file read, we transfer the type property file system class,
Передавай в атрибуты.
and then there is a file and transfer its attributes, then payload for RCE. I'm not going to speak about it right now, but you know where to take it if you need to break something.
Что такое SSTR?
SSCA. Who knows what is SSTI?
Template injection.
Server-side template injection. The idea of this injection is that we can inject RC in a templater.
Razor.
Templater is Razor.
Как и любой другой шаблон
How it looks like any other templater,
языка .NET.
it allows some .NET constructs like C# be executed on representation, so on a view.
Выглядит это примерно вот...
How does it look like? It looks like that. We have a controller. In a given case, it's vulnerable.
Параметр для
We transfer some parameter for the simplicity of example razor template, and this razor template drops to the view like that.
Вот в таком виде. То есть у нас есть
Like that.
представление, оно попадает...
So we have our representation, it goes to the parameters, and then we have this parenthesis. That's how templater looks like. For example, if we have user input and we can transfer some vulnerable method by .NET, it's going to be executed.
Например,
Payload looks like that.
функцию system.
So I transfer this function system process start calculator, local injections, log. There's another library for logging.
Самое интересное,
And what is available here? The most interesting thing, what is available here,
ресерчить, это...
what I was able to research, it was something like this.
Взглянем на следующий.
Can you help me with this clicker?
Логирует. В данном случае он говорит...
Okay, this is a code that logs something. It tells that I started logging, checks the time of its logging, and there's another use. Some variable can be transferred inside of it, like a format string in .NET. It's a very simple thing. There's nothing interesting about it. All these together can go into JSON format, or it can go into a standard format, which is readable. In JSON, it would look like that. In a readable format, it would look like that. However, let's see what kind of the story we have. These use serial log methods should be used. For example, if you want to find vulnerability in a code somewhere, it's going to be your pattern following which you're going to research. And let's speak about the vulnerable method. Controller method transfer some name into it. This name is being logged. Okay, what can you do about it? So that's how would it look like. And you can do the following. Transfer enter,
В результате мы получаем...
and then in the result you get additional some logs. You can lie to people who read those logs. However,
Но вот нет.
well, it's a maximum impact, but no, it's not. One day I started playing with this story
Всякие...
and started transferring to logs different CMD injection parameters, for example, comma, ls, etc., etc. And I was putting it into my server.
Около 4.
And I was able to catch about 4 RCs when I was
Прикольно.
doing it in a mass character. So through the logs you can make some RCs. I don't know what was under the hood. Logs through some script were processed on Python because of the replies that I was getting, but it happens.
Dynamic core.
Link dynamic core. I'm going to tell you what link is. A link is a feature in .NET which allows to
Синтаксисом.
from SQL syntaxes to work with data arrays,
Как это...
objects, and other things. And how does it look like? Let's say that we have a simple class customer. It has an ID and a name.
Список.
And there's a list.
Customer
The
1.
list of this object, customer 1, customer 2.
Выбрать.
Let's say that we want to select customer 1. Therefore, we are writing from E in collection select, let's select E.
Только имена. Или...
Only names.
Выглядело вот так.
Or in a given case, it was looking like that, general construct.
Выбрали конкретно...
And then, how we would choose a specific customer with an ID equal 1? It's just a simple link. You understand what it is? Okay. Dynamic link. What is dynamic link?
Мы можем прямо...
The idea of the dynamic link is that you can transfer the data that was acquired from the selection into a proper format. In a given example, it's a general example, but you just add another variable and you create new objects as a list. And now, let's think,
Предположим, вот так.
how can this be used? Let's assume we have a code like that. We have a certain list of products, and an important thing, these lists have to be put as... okay, let's explain it in a simple way. As available for dynamic requests. This is a squareable method. For example, if you would like to search for this, search an squareable pattern, then you'll be able to say that in theory,
Так ее обозвал.
dynamic injection is possible. That's how I call it. And the meaning is here the following.
И в user input...
There is an example, and user input gets a name. How does it look like? Well, it's a simple curl request, IP, a name, and a valuable JSON format. Everything's understandable for you. However, in a .NET, there's a possibility as a reflection. What is a reflection? All classes in .NET are inherited from one single VBA,
Базового.
one single basic class. And that's why a reflection is a possibility function of an object.
Что мы
It can study itself.
Как это использовать? Мы можем...
What can we do? How can we use it? Hierarchically, we can go upwards and then we can go down and call the necessary method for some RC execution.
Вот так.
That's how it looks like.
Мы бы
Healthy payload like that we could use. Because we're good hackers, we're not going to do that. So we get type, where specifically we get up domain, our basic class, and from this basic class we once again hierarchically of inheritance we go downwards and we select the proper method after which we call our favorite calculator.
Если мы бы в curl это
That's how would it look if we would put it in curl,
получаем reverse shell.
and then we get reverse shell.
Текст. Ага, XML-ки. Давайте...
Okay, XMLs. Okay, let's speak about XMLs. XXE.
Кто знает эту атаку?
XML external entities. Who knows this attack?
Надо рассказать. Надо...
Okay, somebody needs to hear it. The idea is
Возможность обработки XML.
we have a possibility of processing XML files. Well, sometimes we do it, sometimes we do it differently. And the idea is the following. In the XML format, there's a thing called
Это,
entities.
по сути,
The entities basically are objects inside of the XML that we can implement into XML
что-то делать, какой-то...
to work with the processing. Do something, read some file, put some data, send it somewhere.
В том, что мы можем читать локальные
And
файлы,
the idea of this attack that you can read local files, in some cases execute RC,
мы можем выполнить такое-то, как SSRF. В общем,
you can do something like RSSF,
давайте рассмотрим теперь, как
SRF, and you can do some other things. But let's see how it can be done in .NET. Of course, in Microsoft guys know about this attack. and they created by design. However,
И она даже не одна.
there's a library, and it's not a single one, which allows, even until now, execute XXE attacks. And what is the main idea here? Let's look at a simple payload.
В данном случае я просто
It would look like that. I just read etc host file,
А почему не получится?
and in the result you get nothing. Why don't we get anything? Because there are some certain peculiarity, like in this story.
Взглянем вот на такой код.
Let's look at code like this.
Видим такую штуку,
In
которая
this code, you see something that is called XML Resolver. By default, XML Resolver is installed, and it's not redefined. We use the basic one. In the basic Resolver, DTT entities, they are extensions, they are disconnected.
под капотом работает.
How all these works under the hood, all this class hierarchy, specifically peculiarities of these vulnerabilities will be told to you by the speaker, which is going to speak at this stage. His name is Sergey Vasilyev. It's his research,
Можно почитать, но он лучше расскажет, я думаю.
and it's his research about Hub that I'm going to speak about. Okay, please go and listen. I'm not going to take the breath from the speaker, and I will move on.
Об этом говорю я
But
сейчас.
why am I telling you about this right now? Because using his research, I found a lot of vulnerable libraries which by design have redefined this resolver
XE.
and vulnerable XXE. Let's move on.
Так, ну здесь
Mass assignment.
я просто расскажу.
I'm not going to ask you about anything, I'm just going to tell you.
Суть атаки в чем?
In a given case, the idea of the attack is in the following. .NET is a very cool language.
Потому
In a given case, SPNet because...
вернемся к сути. У нас есть модель.
Let's go back to ideas. We have a model.
Пользователь
User.
следующие параметры. И
User have the following parameter, and please note one of the properties
который говорит, админ.
is admin, which tells you admin user or not admin.
Предположим, у нас
What can be done? Let's assume we have an action. Controller has a certain method that we hate,
этот экшен
and
мы передаем целый объект. То есть
this action as a parameter we transfer the full objects by the class user. It is assumed that we will get a login, password, and nothing else from the user. But the smart hacker, which can guess approximately which parameters could there be, can transfer from admin and therefore
вот суть.
can become an admin himself.
Когда мы передаем целый объект,
That's a mass assignment when you transfer the full object as a parameter and not a separate
прям объект.
string login, string password, but a user object. You can additionally transfer the properties of this object.
Будем использовать. Есть библиотечка.
How are we going to use it? There is a library which works
Выглядит она.
with authorization and it looks like that.
То есть
One-off.
мы сюда передаем все.
So therefore, you transfer all the artifact to create this, and then we use it. And we use it, as you understand, as a simple object. You transfer GVT, but you expect GVT token, and you transfer the whole object class and generate GVT token. What is importantly to be done? Yes, by the request, study the library, look at its parameters. It's open with an open source code, and secret key should be transferred just like that. We transfer our secret key, our GVT,
Созданные через этот secret key, и таким образом
created to secret key, and then bypass authorization, mass assignment, restrict path.
ресерчер, хакер достаточно известный.
There is a researcher, a well-known hacker. His name is Anton Boom.
В продуктах Atlassian он ресерчил такую
And in Atlassian products, he researched a thing like that.
URL. То есть у вас, например, там HTTP, www, Confluence,
For example, you have http confluence.ru/admin, and you're not going to be admitted, but when you will put a space, you will get into the admin. In .NET, they have something similar. There's a wonderful construct which transfer identifiers
это выглядит.
directly to the URL. How does it look like? It looks like that. For example,
Напрямую
if you will try directly follow this link, you are going to have restrict denied, access denied, whatever. So you will not be able to read this file because file of the resources goes outside of the visibility of the catalog.
Но, соответственно, если вы поставите вот этот самый
And if you will have this in front of the identifier, and this is a web form topic in Exponet, you will be able to read these resources and bypass EE's restrictions. It's a web server where the SPNet is working. Let's move on. Log4net. Who knows what is Log4j?
shell атаку,
And Log4Shell attack?
Log4net. Естественно,
Wonderful.
говорящее название достаточно...
And it's a loud clickbait name. You want to research this. RC is not going to work here.
Все работает. Но нужно понимать,
And it works differently.
что делает Log4net, Log4j,
It's done by Look4Net, Look4G, Look4C.
пишут для разных языков. И вот эти же ребята
They write it for different languages.
в Log4net тоже...
Those guys who've been doing it for Log4G, they did have some vulnerabilities.
К сущностям.
Let's go back to entities XML.
Вот на такой код. Соответственно, зеленым
And let's look at this code. Okay, in the green color, you can see something that would be good. In the red, you see something thanks to which XXE is possible.
естественно, я грепал по этим параметрам, используя эту...
And I was following these parameters using this library. Okay, I grabbed it, and what have I found?
Передадим.
So if our payload will be transferred to user agent, library will log it, and then it will go to some logs. I think you understand the idea. Like in the log4j, we just in user agent, we transfer XML or XXE attack payload. What is the main idea? In the logs, we're not going to be able to see it because we're not server admins. So we use a blind and SCA attack, and we get the result.
И
So that's the story.
этот
So I'm going to tell you another thing. This CVE,
очень интересно, потому
when
что
I paid attention to it, it was very interesting because I see it.
знаете, такое часто
And when I started looking at the information, it does happen like that. Well, there's a CVE, but there's no POC. All CVE identifier, but nobody opens it. How this CVE can be exploited? Yes, it's understandable for simple reasons, of course, but then it became so interesting for me to pull this out, and I started researching.
смысл там
Wow.
такой. Если
The main idea was in the following. Simply speaking,
потому что
a format string attack is possible out there because in this specific library they have a construct which executed in non-safe code environment.
стал это ресерчить, я, естественно, полез...
And when I started researching this, I went to GitLab commits, and I was really thankful to the developers or anybody else who deployed the test. What they've done, they made the tests specifically for fixing this attack.
Прямо пейлоды свои же туда...
They took their own payloads and put it inside of it, and I immediately understood how this attack works. And then I had to understand how to create my own POC.
Ребята мне уже...
Well, I thought, okay, guys gave me very good help, and then I will do it myself. And I started looking at what is really happening out there.
На что нужно обратить внимание? На то, что...
What should you pay attention to? First of all, we work with bytes. Wonderful. It means we do have some overflow. Then we work in non-safe code.
Кстати, еще одна функция, которая перебирает это все в 8-бит.
There's another function which looks at these 8-bit values you can get outside of the threshold of the memory because we're not managing the memory here. And this is a code. I shouldn't explain it. It's just a test through which they've been testing.
А теперь взглянем, как
And right now, let's look at how it works.
она кодирует тег.
The idea of the library is that it codes text in HTML, URL, JavaScript, etc. Okay.
Есть вот такая функция, предположим,
And there's a function. Let's assume that in this function, from user input, we get name.
и как бы выглядел...
Name of some user. And that's how payload would look like. It would look like that. I'm not translating it completely so that nobody would do anything bad, but please go to my GitHub.
Калькулятор.
There is a POC that launches calculator.
Я вам рассказал про уязвимости
I've been telling you about vulnerabilities.
постановкой проблемы, по сути.
It was the end of the problem, by the way. But what can be done with it?
Возьмем
Let's look at several projects, different projects. I had about different things, different projects in GitHub, .NET projects, and I tried to look at vulnerable dependencies and those that I've been speaking about.
я очень много разных...
I've been using a lot of different tools.
Все остальные бесплатно.
One paid, other are free ones. The paid one will be the idea. And this tool is a continuation of those projects. It's called code scoring. Code scoring, what it is? It's SCA solution, a big one on the market. And I would like to tell you that code scoring advertising is not going to be available because I'm not paid for it. But I would like to say thank you very much to Lyosha Smirnov and code scoring team because they gave me the stand so that I would tell you and compare some things between each other. Plus, he's going to be the next one to speak. Yeah, and he's going to tell you something about that. And I'm going to show you. Okay, let's look at how does it work by itself and what it gives you. We can see the scanned libraries, including you can see those vulnerabilities that I was speaking about in our project. And you can see that there's a lot of critical ones that we've used. There's a lot of repetitions because these are different projects. However, generally speaking, there's a lot of them. Well, next one. There is a general statistics here, how many vulnerabilities, how many dependencies, etc. You can see all of it. Very convenient. And this is my favorite slide. I'm just, getting pleasure from this picture. The thing is, when we're speaking about libraries, you have to understand one important thing. There are libraries, direct dependency libraries, and there are transitive dependency libraries. The direct dependent, we have a code you call vulnerable leave, and this is a function of this vulnerable leave can be used in the code. However, you can find a situation that you have a code, you have called non-vulnerable leave, and this leave pulls vulnerable leave and brings you, I have still a lot of time, and it brings you vulnerability, your code, but not directly, through several iterations or several links. And in a given tool, a cool thing are those graphs. When you see direct graph, the first level shows you that painted circle is the direct one, which can be used in the code directly. And a non-painted circle shows you that through me, I'm pulling some vulnerable one behind myself. And there could be a lot of those graphs and with multiple levels depending on how many of them are together. Pretty cool. I loved it, and I wanted to share it with you. So, it was about a code scoring. .NET Retire, well, it's a dead thing. I'm not going to speak about it at all. Nobody supports it. Console utility, but I'm just showing it to you by the purity. Cool tool and not cool tool, which is not supported anymore. Well, dependency tracker, well-known tool, open source, cool tool for free solution. Everything's pretty cool. Everything's wonderful. I think you know about it. I'm just showing to you, and I'm showing you the UI that is available. 3V. Basically, it's not ACA, but ACA function does exist in some formats. 3V is more a scanner for different configurations, settings, etc. SimGrep, supply chain. SimGrep is a well-known SAST, free of charge. There is a paid one. And just recently, they decided to create an RC, and they created a pretty cool tool, but it's available only in the Pro version. Well, can we move on? And .NET CLI. This is something developed by .NET. It's a very simple thing. There's a knowledge database for vulnerable libraries, but that .NET CLI matches your code, your project, with this knowledge database. Founded, not founded. So I'm making an example of how it works. And let's compare them between each other. So the first one is going to be the code scoring. I would like to pay your attention to false positive column. What is a false positive, especially when we speak about libraries? It's like simple, it's there or it's not there. So basically there shouldn't be any falses. But what do I understand under false positives? If the library is available, but vulnerable function is not used in the code, I think it's a false positive. How I've been looking at it. Previously, I've been showing you some vulnerabilities. I've been emphasizing them in the red color patterns, through which you can search for them and find them in the code, those functions, and basically grapple. Very simple. That's what I was thinking as false positives. So let's pay attention to some numbers. First of all, the number of libraries. Please pay attention to SimGrep. I would like to show it to you. It has discovered 20,000 libraries, which includes transitive ones. And everywhere I've been switching the function switch on transitive dependencies. And 472 dependencies. But I've been giving these projects like CMS and other ones, and SimGrep was the only one who also put some JavaScript inside of it, in addition to .NET. So it's not a really relevant sample out there, but still is out there. I've been looking at these particular tools, which you show on the screen. These were the results I've got. I think I'm not going to speak in detail about all of them, because I've told you what is a false positive. Everything else is really understandable. Well, if it's going to be interesting, please read it, but you have to understand that I've been comparing code scoring with free solutions, because if I would compare them with paid solutions, then I would get some trouble. Well, another thing, I promised to show you something that doesn't work. Trivia was not able to work with .NET. Zero in all projects. Didn't find anything. .NET Retire gave me these results. Number of available sys20, 0 critical, nothing. Because as I've told you, it's not supported anymore. Well, I wanted to wish you some happiness to all of you. Thank you very much for coming, listening to me. Oh, I still have so much time. Mamma mia. And my data, my name is Aleksey. Please evaluate my presentation by QR code. If you like it, ask questions. Come to my other presentations, including my presentations, or even my presentations. If you have any questions, okay, you can give me some applause. Oh, there's a question.
Да, привет.
Привет.
Так, меня слышно, да? Все, теперь слышно. Вот по последнему слайду у меня вопрос про
Getting back to the last slide,
работал.
you mentioned the dependencies. I have more experience with other dependencies. I have a question regarding the number of vulnerabilities. Where did you get the SIDS? And dependency track allows you to connect any feed database. I got it from the web.
Если сравнивать тот же самый SimGrep,
If we compare SimGrep with dependency track, I'd love to get comparative tables
искались уязвимости в сбомниках.
mentioning the feed database.
Ремарку по поводу SimGrep, то, что он мне еще JS
Oh, well, I'll get back to SimGrep in connection with...
ощущение, что как будто
well, for you not to think that SimGrep is much cooler than the others.
dependency track я брал
As to the dependency track,
по сути паблик репозиторий по нему, по фидам.
I used the public repository for ASP.NET.
Я не скажу, что он плохой. Он хорошо справляется со своей задачей.
Oh, well, I don't mean that it's bad. It works well.
Выборка не
However, as to dependency track, my sampling
получилось, потому
is
что
not big enough because
особенно последними CVE-шками.
it's not enriched, especially with the most recent CVs.
Ну, то есть я могу ссылку потом скинуть где-нибудь.
Well, basically, I can give you the link if you ask for it. Another point as to the number of libs. Dependency track
Настраивал и все.
received. Oh, well, you just set it up. Yes, but
Но
instead of dependency track, you should have cycle dependency X here.
отливал это через циклон DX.
Я понимаю, да.
But I did that through
Так-то циклон.
what you mentioned. Yes, you're right. Another question.
Пожалуйста, на слайд, который про XXE.
Could you please get back to the XXE slide? Yes, let's get back
Я начну.
to XXE.
Сказано про то, что
It
узин
says
работает только в случае
that the vulnerability only works with a certain configuration.
И вот мой вопрос,
And for some configurations, it's in the code.
например,
So my question goes
может
to the code scoring developers. Why don't we add
поиска в коде небезопасных
the search in the code of unsecure configurations to the method,
возможно. Спасибо.
if possible?
Леш,
Thank you.
я думаю, ты сам ответишь на этот вопрос.
Alex, I think you will be in a better position to take this question. I'm not a CM developer, but that's a good point. I've been waiting for it as well. And there is a solution on the market that supports it. Hopefully you will be one of them. Guy, thank you very much for your question. It's a cool question. By the way, hi.
Во второй части твоего доклада было написано, что
In the second part of your presentation, you asked what should be done about that. You compared 5 analyzers, but I still don't understand what should be done about it.
там строим процессы.
Are we introducing tools or building processes?
Я не стал говорить про
As to the processes,
потому что
I refrained from discussing them in my presentation. It appears that everyone
мы ограничиваем supply chain атаки,
are doing the same.
внутренний Nexus,
I'm speaking about supply chain attacks. We go to the internal nexus and set up the SCAs. I gave you a sampling,
что какой-то из них лучше или
the
хуже.
tools to choose from, which does not mean that some of them are better and the others
Инструмента.
are worse. You just know what to select from and what to expect from them. But I don't know how to get protected from those attacks without the C tools.
Я что
So, what should be chosen?
Ты бы вот,
What do you recommend?
не знаю, вот пришел бы сейчас в новую компанию, тебя
Я
спросили.
не буду отвечать.
For instance, if you come to a new company,
Красиво, если я буду
Хорошо.
что-то...
I'm not going to answer this question.
Если нет бюджета,
Well,
все, что я
if there
приведу...
is no money, no budget,
Понятно.
well, everything except for the scoring is free of charge.
коммерческих решений.
There are plenty of commercial solutions as well. By the way, there are also
Друзья, коллеги, еще вопросы? О, есть что-то там. Что-то хотят спросить.
our solutions. Any more questions? Alexey, hi.
Спасибо за
Thank you for your presentation. Thank you for mentioning me. Sergey Vasilyev.
ответить
Likewise,
по поиск.
a few words about the SCA project. You asked this question. Well, basically,
Ешек ловить со стами.
some of
Там специальные
XXEs can be caught
различные
with rules
но там прям
that will be detecting specific settings, but there are a lot of details depending on the programming languages.
безопасные.
There are safe parsers and unsafe parsers depending on the frameworks, and so on and so forth.
Воскресенье я в 11 часов там буду много
Next Sunday at 11 a.m.,
Можно
I'll be giving you a lot of details about it.
и какие
How they can be caught, why some of them cannot be caught.
Я уже прорекламировал.
это анонс.
Don't spoil it, don't spoil it. I've already announced it.
Спасибо. Еще.
Well, thank you.
Еще можем целых 15
Anything else? We have 15 minutes more to discuss whatever we want.
Могу я с вами поговорить.
Да.
Как
I
настроение
can
после
talk to
доклада?
you.
Не ухудшилось? Отлично.
How are you?
Да, вопрос.
Да, наверное, то, что это...
How did you like my presentation?
Вот.
Well, my name is Anton.
По поводу ответа, я тут скорее не только про ЦВЕ
As to your answer,
говорил,
my question was not only about XXE, but also about
там есть как
vulnerabilities in general. As to the XXE, it shows an interesting pattern, which is only typical of this library. And for it in particular, we could add something to identify this particular exposure. As to false positive or not false positive, it's up to the client to decide. Apart from XXE, there are other vulnerabilities that are pretty unique.
Я думаю, все разработчики SCA, которые сейчас
Well,
в зале,
thank you. I think that all the
я надеюсь.
XXE developers should come up with this feature for sure.
Еще вопросы будут?
I hope for it
Тогда у
at
меня последний
least.
вопрос. Как вам доклад? Нормально?
Well, if there are no more questions, my last question. How did you like my
Спасибо
presentation?
большое за внимание.
Well, that's it. Thank you very much for your attention. And I wish you
Сейчас, там у меня есть. Одну секунду, можно?
to enjoy our event. I have something to say.
Один лучший вопрос доклада, дарим футболку. Соответственно, да, ты должен...
We usually give a T-shirt
Вот прям тройной. Вот.
to the one who asked the best question. You should select the best one.
Вот.
I suggest that the T-shirt goes to this man. I would like to
Вообще
give
отлично.
it to him.